Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Bleak House Books, a bookshop with new and used books for readers of all ages located in downtown Honeoye Falls, featuring the Pickwick Club, a quarterly mail-order book subscription service. Details at bleakhousebooks.com.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour was made in 1964 when the Beatles first appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show. It was a culturally transformative event in a way that we can hardly imagine happening today. Rochester's 10th Ward was home to brothers John and Joe Dady, just 9 and 6 years old at the time. The day after the Beatles took the Sullivan Show by storm, the Dadys wandered out to their street, looked at all the kids on the block, and everyone kind of decided, well, we all had to get guitars now. One of Rochester's fanciest music shops almost immediately changed half its inventory from organs to rock and roll equipment. Perhaps like the Beatles themselves, the Dady brothers would not follow a simple or linear path in music. John and Joe would learn to play a wide range of instruments, and their own musical desires would evolve with time. Today, we know them as Rochester music legends and leaders in the Irish music scene. That's why it might be hard to believe that for years the Dadys were considered outsiders in Irish music, not exactly the most authentic practitioners of the form. By the mid to late 1980s, that would change, thanks to their devotion to learning their Irish roots, loving their culture, and working to perfect some of the most challenging instruments to play. These stories are part of a new book called Singing from the Heart, The Dady Brothers, Irish Music, and Ethnic Endurance in an American City. We lost Joe Dady a few years ago, and the book even captures the moments after his death when his hospital room filled with impromptu song. John is here with me in studio today. The family's music lives on, and we're going to talk about the book, their story, and some of the things that are happening in our community now. First of all, John Dady, welcome back to Connections. It's lovely to have you here.
What an introduction. I'm totally humbled.
Well, I mean, it's just stolen from the book here. That's all I did there.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that introduction.
It's great to have you. And welcome to Christopher Shannon, who's on the line with us, the author of Singing from the Heart. Hello, Christopher. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, Evan, and hi to you, John.
Hello, Christopher.
I should say the book is available now, and it is the story of the Dady brothers. But Chris has said to our colleagues at City Newspaper that originally the book was going to have a section on the Dadys, but it's about Rochester's 10th Ward. It's about these culturally significant moments and evolution in a part of our city. But, John and Joe became such a big part of it. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about...
They crowded everything out. I tried to keep them in a little
Dady brother personality.
But you know them.
Here we go.
Chris, how would you describe the mission of what you set out to do with this book?
Yeah, it was. I'm a historian of several things. One of them, Irish American culture, and again, as I told the city people, at first I was thinking like, do kind of a book about the neighborhood, and so I could break that down into different components and such, some Irish, some non-Irish, but the more I thought about it, it dawned on me that look, the way this is going is it's going to be just another example of there goes the neighborhood. It was once great and flourishing, and now it's declined. And so when I was going through what would have been the original chapters, okay, what story doesn't end badly? What story doesn't end with, well, what used to be is gone, and that's where John and Joe really rose to the top. So I thought that rather than tell the story of the neighborhood with them just a part of it, it's tell their story as the kind of example of the life and culture that continued on, even when the neighborhood itself obviously did not continue. And so that also again enabled me to just get to know them better, because I didn't know them for most of my adult life, and to get more into the Irish music thing, which I've had a long interest in as well.
Well, and so John's got his guitar, and not pretty soon here we're going to ask him to. Well, we'll sprinkle in a little music throughout the hour if that's okay with you.
I should hope so.
All right.
Yeah.
But take me back a little bit, John, because I want to know from your words here, when you think about the household you grew up in, Your dad was I thought, pretty clever with using music at times, and that was important to you. And then the Ed Sullivan show happens, and everybody in America, every kid wants to be a rock and roll star. What do you remember first when you think about your first memories of music? Is it your dad? What comes to mind for you?
Well, you mentioned Dad. The first time that I ever remember learning how to sing, to harmony sing,
Mm-hmm.
it was even before the Beatles. Joe and I were very young, and we were up, roughhousing in our bedroom. There were 6 of us, 6 kids, so we shared a bedroom. And we used to play this game called Pillow Clip. One kid would jump on the bed, and the other would try to clip his legs out from under him with the pillow. And Mom didn't like that. We probably broke 2 or 3 beds. But Dad yelled from the downstairs and stop all that roughhousing, and on we went, and we heard him bounding up the stairs, and he said, I'm bringing a belt. He never used it, but we knew he meant business, and he popped in the door and said, sit down, I'm going to teach you how to sing harmony. And we did a song he taught us, My Echo, My Shadow, and Me, an old Ink Spots tune. My echo, my shadow, and me, and we sang the 3 parts. Little did he know what musical monsters he was creating, but that was my first memory of learning how to sing.
Chris's book captures some of this so beautifully. This idea that this father could be saying to the kids, "I'm bringing the belt."
Right.
Never once used it.
No.
But then I love this. I'm bringing the belt, and you know what we're going to do?
We're
learning harmony. You kids are learning harmony.
Dad was just, I remember the great Mark Twain quote, I thought my dad was the dumbest guy in the world at 17. When I turned 21, I was amazed at how much he learned in 4 years. And I think we all go through that. That's how my dad got his nickname Hank in his later years. I think Chris put that in the book.
That was in the book for sure. Yeah, the honey story. Yeah.
He would call Joe and I honey in front of our friends when we were 16 years old, and it was embarrassing. So somehow we said, okay, Hank. And then our friends started calling him Hank, and then his friends started calling him Hank, and he died Hank.
That's an amazing story. Chris, are you hearing these stories from John and everybody you talk to thinking, like, how am I going to fit everything in a book?
It was. That's why it took so long. It was like there's doing the interviews and then kind of sorting through them all and trying to make sense of all the craziness and sometimes contradictory accounts and stuff. And but what I'm so thankful for is there was so much to work off of. I mean, just when I first started mentioning even to my friends, it's like, well, I'm going to write a book on the Davies. Even some of them were like, well, is there enough there to write? We know them, we like them, I like their music, but can you write a book about them? And I discovered pretty quickly that there was way more than I could ever use. It was out of sometimes a painful editorial process to leave things out, and I even apologize in the acknowledgments for all the people who gave me their time. It's like I couldn't fit that story in there and still have the book make sense. I didn't want it to just be this like, okay, memories of the 10th Ward. Somebody said this, somebody said that, and so I had to make decisions in leaving things out to craft a story that people could follow.
Well, and the book is not just, I think, a love letter to the Davies. It really respects a lot of the people that the Davies were learning from, these musical figures who they were respecting and hearing and idolizing, and you get to know those stories as well. Chris is clearly a historian, and the book it really reflects that scholarship. But it's also, in my mind, a kind of a love letter to a different time in American cities. So if you think about the 10th Ward is up where Kodak is 104, all the way down to what's the perimeter? You want to mention the perimeter of this particular part of the city, Chris?
Yeah, the way I drew the lines, just a lot of this from my own kind of sense of growing up there, and I'd give like the west side is the railroad tracks, roughly, or Mount Read Boulevard, and then the east side is the is the river. The river provides that kind of natural border, and then the north side would be about the Ridge Road, kind of 104, and then the south would be about Lexington or so, where Holy Rosary is. A little south from my upbringing. we stopped at Wegmans and didn't go past that, but given where the Davies were, had to have like Lexington Avenue is the kind of the southern border, if you will, of the 10th Ward.
And John, Chris's book takes us to a time where there were these bars that they didn't have to be the sparkling most beautiful things. They were community places.
Oh God, yeah.
And there were so many of
joints.
them, right? I mean,
They were all over the place. Yeah, they really were.
and people got to know each other often through places like that.
And when Joe and I started getting work in these places, there was this kind of competition between the owners. I got them for St. Patty's. No, I want them St. Patty's. But they were all, I mean, I can remember playing at the Loft the first time, which is on Dewey Avenue. I think it's a Jamaican food place now. But playing in the front window. It was terrible. I mean, you're surrounded by glass in the PA system, so anybody that knows audio knows the sound was terrible, and we were stuck up in the window, and we took our breaks in the window because just getting down and off and getting your place back in the window took 10 minutes, so we just took our breaks right in the window of the Loft.
I mean, the stories they just paint this really interesting picture of a Rochester that it's still Rochester, but a lot has changed for sure.
Oh my goodness!
And so much of the book kind of gives you that sense of what it would have been like in the 60s, 70s, even the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
But let me kind of get back here, and I want to just ask for your characterization. When you remember seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, how much did that make you think, well, this is what I'm doing?
It was it. I mean, I can remember being out at my grandmother's house in Spencerport, which was a trek back then. It was before any of the interstates were going through town. And both my sisters, who were in their teen years, just Beatles this, Beatles that. We got to get home, Mom and Dad. We got to get home. And I remember Joe and I saying, Beatles, Schmeatles, whatever. And then, everybody sat around the TV together. There was only one TV in the house. People didn't have their individual screens in front of them. And the Beatles came on, and later on, Joe used to describe it like, wow, they make really good music, they look good, and chicks dig them. Joe would joke about that, but instantly, we had already been exposed to music, through our dad, the big band stuff. But it was an instant thing. That's what I want to do when I grow up. I knew I didn't want to be the Beatles, but I wanted to make music,
And Chris's book shares the way that your father, he was like, okay, Beatles are kind of cool. Like, we could do that. And then the Beatles start changing, and they kind of go through their late 60s phase.
Oh, yeah.
Lucy and the Sky with Diamonds. And,
yeah.
And the Daddy Dad is like, I don't know about this.
He put up with Rubber Soul and Revolver, but by the time Sgt. Pepper's came out, Dad was like, no, it's getting a little weird now.
It's a pretty cool dad, though. I mean, he hung with it for a while.
He did hang with it for a while. And then, as Chris mentions in the book, numerous times he would get up on stage with this in some pretty rough joints, packed houses down at the brew house, wall-to-wall hippies and bikers, and Dad would hop up on stage. And to see my dad, he wasn't a big guy. He was maybe 5'9". He had very thick glasses. His vision was so poor that he couldn't go in the Army in World War II. Mm-hmm. So he just was kind of an odd-looking guy, and as Chris describes, and he had like a Mr. Rogers sweater on, and would step up on stage and sing a couple songs with Joe and I. Always brought the house down. Within a minute, he would have the crowd in his hand. He just had that knack.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I really appreciate how this book explores the question of what it means to be an Irish band, what it means to know your roots. We learned that Joe took multiple trips to Ireland to learn an instrument that I can't even pronounce.
Uilleann.
I'm sorry, what is it?
It sounds so much easier than well, that's Irish, the Gaelic, you know.
Yeah.
It's Uilleann. Like chillin', Uillinn.
I think Irish spelling is just to mess with us.
It is.
It's
like
really-
the Irish drum is a baran, and it's spelled Bodhran. So people are always saying, "You playing that Bodharan?" Yeah. Uillinn pipes.
But Chris, clearly Joe and John understood that that to be accepted and loved as playing Irish music, that had to be kind of earned.
Yeah, and that's one thing. I mean, that I learned about that as somebody who was familiar with Irish music, but mostly from the outside through recordings and everything. What really struck me is just how, from the inside, John and Joe came to it, especially in a time by the '70s. It's not like now where you can just point and click, but traditional Irish music was available through recordings. My father would get like the Clancy Brothers and the Chieftains or stuff, but John and Joe were learning it from Irish people at the Irish Inn. First with the ballads, with the immigrants and stuff, but it was that personal connection. And then when they turned to the instrumental music with someone like Marty O'Keefe or something, and the scene down at the Friendship Tavern, they were getting it. It was being transmitted in the old way,
Sure.
in the oral tradition, which was just amazing. Like one of the most shocking things was it's the late '70s, and they just discovered Tommy Macon and Liam Clancy at the Syracuse Fairgrounds or something. It's like, I think even I knew about the Clancy Brothers, but so much of the music
we knew
was
about
direct.
the Clancys, but we didn't know about
Yeah.
Macon and Clancy.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
but we weren't really exposed to it till that time in Syracuse.
And that's, to me,
Oh, yeah.
now everybody gets it. I think just about everybody, unless you're in a real traditional community, it's like they all get it through the CDs and the internet and stuff. And in some sense, that's good because it keeps the music alive and has more people playing it. But there's no substitute for the personal connection. That's what I tried to stress throughout the book, is the kind of you guys learned the music through people. You played the music for people. This wasn't just, well, this is a profession. We play this kind of music and we get paid to do it. It was always about connections and community, which is why you guys were able to last so long.
Yeah.
And to Christopher's point on, you couldn't just point and click and discover everything you want to discover about instrumentation unless, it might say well, who was your, kids today would say, well, who was your social network? I mean, your social network was the Irish Inn. It was the Friendship. Those were social networks at the time.
Absolutely.
That's a different thing.
And it's human to human. And that's my fear we're going to lose in our culture, is that human to human connection.
I agree.
That I think I learned my art so much better by actually feeling it off someone sitting in front of me,
Yeah.
as opposed to looking at a screen. That's where we are, isn't it?
And it is in many ways. By the way, before I ask you to play a little bit of music,
Sure.
Can you just elaborate on the story? I think Chris was talking about it, but there's a point where you and your brother both go to Syracuse to end up seeing a show, not knowing that the other one was there, and you both got home to Rochester, and you're like, you got to see this guy.
Absolutely.
That's a true story.
It's an absolutely true story. So my wife, Carol, who at the time was my girlfriend, and her older sister, Rose, went to Ireland on a tour with their aunt who used to do cultural tours. And they came back, and they're the ones that said, let's go down to the Irish Inn. And that's when I first met the Emigrants. But it was a last-minute thing. Carol called me and said, we're going
to the Emigrants, the band.
The band, the Emigrants,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Yeah, no.
down
I
at
just
the
want to make
Irish
sure
Inn.
people who are not up
Right.
on there you go.
And she called and said, we're going to Syracuse to see Macon and Clancy. And I had heard of some of Tommy's songs, but I never put a face on it because, like we were just saying, you just hear a song, and that's my only connection to him. I can't go and
Just click on it and,
and
listen
click
all
his
day.
name
That's
and
right.
listen to all his music. Exactly. So we went to the show, and I remember sitting not too far back. It was at the fairgrounds, so the sound was just horrendous for folk music. And I actually went up to the sound man and was in his face, like, his guitar is way too Liam's guitar sounded like it was a transistor radio. It was just terrible. So, and then afterwards, I had just been to Ireland, and I had a street sale, I found this little ocarina, little clay whistle that hung on my neck. And I barreled backstage. I just wanted to meet Tommy, you know? And I put up this little whistle and played him a little tune. He got his attention and he came over to me and he said, Brazil, like that's where it came from. He knew the instrument. It was a South American instrument. Came home and I was all set to tell Joe. And not only did Joe see the show, but he got backstage and met them both as well. Unbelievable,
and you never
isn't
saw
it? And
each
we
other.
never saw each other. Never saw each other.
So it's just this formative moment. It's just funny that you were both there and not realizing it.
Not realizing, chomping at the bit to tell the other, yeah.
I won't. There's a story in the book that will be really delightful for people who pick up the book, in which you end up later playing with them and maybe upstaging them a little bit in the
Totally,
future.
we're young and just didn't know. Do you want that story now?
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
Well, yeah, Kevin Townsville, he's prominently in the book, an owner of the Shannon Pub in Buffalo. Joe and I did 4-night stints there over the course of probably 10 years or so. And Tommy Makem and Liam Clancy he hired them to come and do 4 shows over the course of 2 nights. We did 2 shows a night in the banquet room in the basement of the hotel, maybe 100 to 150 people. Every night was sold out. We're so excited. Here we were opening up for 2 of our heroes. And we got down there and we blew the roof off. We really did a great show. We had the people on their feet.
High energy.
And then Tommy and Liam come down and, they're 15 plus years older than us and just kind of at the twilight of their careers. And,
a little more mellow set.
Much more mellow set.
Which there's nothing wrong with that.
No, and at the end, I remember very excited going up to Kevin, the promoter of the show, and saying, it was a great night, wasn't it? And he looked at me and said, I'll never have you open up for them again. I said, what do you mean? He says, no, you were just too much. You blew them out of the water, so we learned.
And yet you developed friendships. You didn't lose friendships over this, in fact.
Not at all.
Yeah,
it was the start of a
nice.
lifelong friendship with Tommy. Tommy, I not to pat myself on the back, but the biggest honor of my life was getting the Tommy Makem Scroll of Honor Award in the Europa in Belfast. Totally surprised. But the Tommy loved our spin on his songs. Here these 2 Yanks playing my Irish folk songs and ballads, but with like a bluegrass twist. He liked that. We became really good friends with his kids. His 3 boys had a group, the Makem Brothers. Remained very close with Rory, who I actually brought to Rochester for a show last year. And they would say the same thing. The old man likes the twist you guys put on his music. And it's just that always warmed my heart because here's our hero.
Chris, this is another thing that feels like we're losing as everything becomes digital, everything is on screens. Yep. We spend less time in person. There were so many people that the Dadeys met or idolized or worked with, and the book indicates that there were a lot of real close friendships and relationships that developed that didn't just become rivalries. I mean, there's a lot of really lovely stuff about how their lives impacted each other.
Yeah, I think on that front, I was particularly, surprised and impressed by the relationships developed in Ireland, particularly with Tommy Cousin, the tenor banjo player and maker, and that it's a little variation on the Tommy Makem story. But what I like about that was Tommy Cousin is a real tried and true traditional musician through and through. He played in a Cayley band, a Shaskin Cayley band for many years, and so
60 years they've been playing together.
Yeah. So that's the pure thing. And he, when he realized, and I think John and Joe realized that they do something different, but they were complementary. It's like, you guys, you may not be the purest of traditional musicians, but what you do better than we could do. We can't do it because we're Irish people playing traditional music in Ireland. You do something as Irish Americans that incorporates a lot of the traditional music, but doesn't just try to imitate it or something. And I think that's what they really respected about John and Joe.
So
And then on another note, one thing that I was surprised again and again, even for these Irish people, their first musical experience, because I always asked them that, would be Stephen Foster songs.
Yeah.
The Irish American kind of minstrel composer from the 19th century, which John and Joe did a stage show with several years ago, and that even these people in Ireland that are growing up in the 50s and 60s, it's not like anybody's playing traditional music there. It was pretty marginal in their childhoods as well, and their first experiences of music or awareness of music was through Irish American music of Stephen Foster. And so there is that kind of transatlantic connection going on, and it's not like it all becomes one thing, the same thing, but it develops in different ways in Ireland and in America.
And another perfect example of that, Chris, is when we recorded the Erie Canal CD for the Landmark Society, and we had, all the standard Erie Canal tunes. We had to go fishing around for some more tunes, and we found Tommy Makeham's version of the Ere I Was Rising. And here's this guy from Katie Armagh in Ireland, and we lifted a song from him to put on an Erie Canal CD.
Okay, that's what that was. I didn't realize that's where you would.
That's where I learned it. We learned his version.
In the second edition, I'll slip that in there.
Listeners, you're hearing on the line Christopher Shannon, who's the author of Singing from the Heart, The Dady Brothers, Irish Music and Ethnic Endurance in American City. John Dady is with me in studio. He's a Rochester Music Hall of Famer, a singer and instrumentalist, a musician with the Dady Brothers. And one more question for John before we take our break and come back and listen to some of John's music. When people ask you what it means to play Irish music or what authentic Irish music is, how do you answer that now?
What authentic Irish music is?
When they say, well, you played Irish music, but what is Irish music?
Joe would agree with me if he was sitting here with me. I still don't consider myself an Irish musician. I sit in a room full of people playing the old fiddle tunes, and I don't know many of them. I do some backup. I consider myself more just a folk singer that happens to do Irish music. The music that moves us. That's what our criteria was for either writing tunes or learning song. If it moves us, if it moves an audience, and there's something that Tom Cusson mentions, and I have to say too, Chris, not only is he a great 4-string player, but he's probably the best 4-string banjo maker in Europe. He's the guy.
Yeah.
But Tom Cusson said something about Joe and I too, like they'll never have the nya. Nya is like an Irish slang for somebody that's got the traditional, that has that thing, whatever it is. The nya.
The nya?
The nya.
They wouldn't say good crack, they'd say nya.
Well, crack is a word that means to have a good time.
Okay. Yeah.
The stories, the booze was flowing, the stories were flowing, the BS was
good crack. Yeah.
Good crack. The crack was 90 last night, Nya is having that magical something. I played
like
with
soul. It's like Irish soul.
It's an Irish soul, that I know that I'll never have.
I don't know if everybody agrees about that, but that humility is well taken.
Yeah.
Listeners, some things to look out for here. Our colleague Patrick Hoskin has written a profile of John Dady, which you can read in the March issue of City Magazine. It'll be on stands at the end of this month, and I've had a chance to take an advanced look at it. It's really. Patrick does such great work, and
what a gentleman too. He and the photographer. Who came with him?
Oh, Berto probably. Was it Berto? I think it was.
It was Berto. Yeah. Yeah. We had a wonderful
great
time
team
together.
Patrick and Berto are absolute superstars. It's a great piece. So that's going to be coming your way in City Magazine, and this Sunday, 2 p.m. at the Pittsford Barnes and Noble, Chris is going to sign copies of the book Singing from the Heart. John, you're going to be playing music on Sunday there as well?
I'll play a couple tunes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we come back from this break here, what are you going to play for us in studio today?
Well, this first song that came to my mind was the song Singing from the Heart.
It's got to be Singing from the Heart.
It's got to be Singing from the Heart. It's kind of our life story in music.
All right. Well, after we take this only break, John Dady has got the guitar, and we're coming back. Hold on. Now we're back on the air, but keep saying this stuff. John's saying nice things about connections.
I am.
Keep it coming.
I'm serious. You are an asset to this community, Evan. And Megan, who I finally have a face on all your crew in there. This is a wonderful show.
Do you know Megan has a dog named Kaylee, named after the Irish dance? I think, Chris, you mentioned the phrase Kaylee Band.
Kaylee is an Irish dance.
There you go.
It's not a dance. It's just when people get together and have like a square dance.
It's a square dance. It's a Kaylee.
Yeah.
Well,
And they kind of look like dogs bouncing around.
That's right. They dance like dogs.
it's very much like Kaylee. Also,
We'll go have a Kaylee and the crack will be fierce.
the crack will be fierce. And by the way, again, crack, Irish term, I think it's C-R-A-I-C.
C-R-A-I-C.
We always
correct.
just have to make sure we're clarifying.
Yes.
And John, you did call me a kid during the break too. You can call me kid anytime. I like that.
Yeah. You are.
The older you get, the more you like it when people call you a kid.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
as you get older, people that shouldn't call me Mister. I hate being called Mister.
Mr. Dady, just say
Oh, I
that's my
hate it.
dad. I mean,
My kids' friends, people in their like 50s. Mr. Dady, please.
You'd rather they called you Hank.
Hank, yeah. No, well, my kids call me Johnny Boy.
Johnny
That's what my kids call me.
Anything but Mister. I'm with you there. All right, so we're going to listen to Singing from the Heart, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
How about this, guys? If I kind of. Ever since we can remember, there's been music in our lives. When Dad played on his horn for us, we're about the age of 5. From big bands to the Beatles, those tunes that everyone knew. Making music round the living room when work and school were through. Well, he taught us how to harmonize, and he made it fun for all. He said, if you don't enjoy yourselves, you don't have to play at all. So we set out on a searching for that minstrel's pot of gold, which we'd find ourselves still looking for in songs both young and old. Now the money ain't great, and that road can get old, but the loving guts that we put in, you give us back to fold. It's a crazy way to make a buck, strumming these guitars. We're just Irish American city boys, singing straight from the heart. Now from Mississippi John and old Blind Blake, we learned them old time blues. And Elvis and Carol Perkins kept us off those blue suede shoes. But the words got more important when we heard Dylan call. Oh, the times they are a-changing, and a hot rain's gonna fall. Now the tunes from our old country, yeah, the Piper's Magic Tramps, the Celtic harp and fiddle, sure they'll get your legs to dance. Ballads of rebellion, all those songs about love and war. How our love Pearl Island has had its border torn. Now we can't forget that old bluegrass, Earl Scruggs and Bill Monroe, Rapping Carter Stanley, playing five-string banjo. If you put this all together, friends, I'll tell you what you've got. Now, brothers making music and giving it our best shot. Still the money ain't great, and that road can get old. But the loving guts that we put in, you give us back twofold. It's a crazy way to make a buck, strumming these guitars. We're just Irish American city boys, singing straight from the heart. We're just Irish American city boys, singing straight from the heart.
Thank you, John Dady. John Dady, singing from the heart, a Dady Brothers classic. Christopher Shannon, you've heard that song many times now, but how does it hit you?
Still, most beautiful song I think that they've ever done. I remember years ago when I was back home visiting, requesting it, and it was a bar in Webster that it was a wannabe Irish bar that didn't last very long, and they kind of said, "Oh no, we can't sing that here because it's just these are kind of too intimate a song to play out in a rowdy bar when you're trying to get people jazzed up and the bartender's busy and stuff." But it's a beautiful song.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
John, the song is self-explanatory. It really wears its heart on its sleeve. But when you play it now, what do you think about?
It's hard.
It's hard to play?
I think I played it at the show for Joe. We did a tribute show for Joe. And I played it last week. That's the first I played it last week. I was playing at Valley Manor for seniors, and Mitzi Collins was in the audience, who's a dear old friend. I just nominated her, and I will again for the Rochester Music Hall of Fame. She deserves to be in there. And I mentioned that, and I said, I'm going to do a song for you, Mitzi, that when you heard this record, you said that song made you cry. I'm getting there now.
Mitzi has an important role in helping the Dady Brothers music, and
Huge.
Huge. It's reflected in the book there. Again, on this journey of multiple genres, folk a big part of it.
Yeah, Joe and I we're always outside looking in to all the different musical. We didn't fit in. We were when we played the bars, we were too small. We didn't have a drummer, so the bar scene, we weren't loud enough and electric enough for them. The folkies thought that we were a bar band. So, we were kind of stuck in the middle there. And Mitzi was the first, really, in the Rochester folk community to reach out to us and open up a whole new audience to us, really. They were sold-out shows at Hochstein. And it really was a jump start in our career. I don't like the word career because we just went out and did gigs. I know we never
had
a
career,
plan.
John. It's a career.
Yeah,
it's a career.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating evolution. That's why the book is. The stories are good. In fact, a story from the book. Was it you or Joe that Mitzi wanted to give sheet music to, and you said, "We don't really do sheet music"?
No, we're both terrible readers. I mean, we can hear. We'll bring Joe in with us. There's a. We're both terrible. Joe's a better reader than I am, but Joe would always make the joke. Those just like golf clubs to me.
The notes look like
yeah,
golf club.
Yeah. I remember we did. We've done a few productions at Jiva, but one had a 162-page score, and Mark Cuddy brought Joe and I into this play. It was Quilters, and the first meeting we said, we're not readers. Because I know you're not readers. I could get Eastman kids to come play this, but you guys play folk music, and it was a folk music, and he brought in Greg Coffin was his name, great, incredible musician. And an actor, brought him in as musical director, and he sat down with Joe and I and would record our parts on a piano, and we'd record them, take them home. And the night before opening night, he goes, "Oh yeah, I forgot the finale at the end. When the folks come out, it's curtain call. You got to hold." And he hands me this thing for the man to play on the mandolin. Just this incredibly difficult piece in E flat, which is almost impossible on the mandolin. And I went home and literally was up all night long to get that down.
And you got it.
I got it, yeah. But it was, any kids out there listening that are musicians, listen, learn how to read. You're much better off.
Let me ask you, John, when I was growing up, my older brother, who was almost 8 years older, he had one of those subscriptions to, was it Columbia? It was like pay $1 and you get like 20 records, and then like a month later, that's when they actually bill you. And all the 18-year-olds thought, this is great. I get all these CDs, this new thing called a CD.
Right.
And we get a bunch of them, and it's $1. And of course, you end up paying through the nose later.
Yeah.
But one of the first CDs that was sent that they suggested based on the music that my family was listening to was a guy named John Gorka, who is I know John, largely a folk singer who I really loved. I mean, he's a wonderful songwriter. I met John at a festival in Canada. He did a version of All That Hammering that I thought was beautiful. Yeah. And I was growing up, even in my teen years, thinking, this guy's great. How come nobody's ever heard of him? So I wonder now how you view this genre. I mean, there's always going to be niches, but are you worried about folk not being appreciated enough?
Evan, I don't.
You don't worry about that? That's good.
I haven't. I'll tell you why. I have kids that are into music. Carol and I had 6 kids, and they're all into music. My son Connor is out in Denver, and he has a roots band, Cottonwood Drifters. He's a nifty little songwriter. I'm very proud of him. But they, just as my older siblings growing up were teaching me, my kids are teaching me about all this incredible roots music that's out there, and how people in their 20s and 30s are fine. I think right now the Irish traditional community in Rochester is stronger than it's been in 50 years right now. 20-year-olds, young kids playing. I have a 13-year-old grandson that plays traditional Irish fiddle.
Fantastic.
He doesn't have the nyah yet, but he's but yeah, it's very strong. I mean, there's just so many young people out there playing great music. There's a lot of crap out there. But if you look with the internet now, you can just find great music from young people. I think folk music is probably stronger now than it was since the 60s. I really believe that.
Well, I think we've got a few other clips. Maybe we can play. Can we listen? Can we do that? How about then we do The Man with the Banjo? Can we start with that one? Is that all right with you, John? Can we listen
I would hope so, yeah.
All right. Let's listen to a little bit of The Man with the Banjo.
A tribute to Pete Seeger.
When I saw him on the TV, he looked so proud and strong. He sang out for peace and justice and how to right a wrong. My brother said it won't be long before they take him off the air. 'Cause he's singing anti-war songs, just seems so unfair. He's the man with the banjo, can't you hear it ring? With freedom in his heart, he makes the mountains sing. He taught the whole world to sing, we shall overcome. When there's peace and justice, that's when his work is done. He sang songs with the Weavers, no better group you'll find. And don't forget old Woody, oh, wasn't that a time? Then came young Bob Dylan and Arlo Guthrie. So you wanna be a folk singer, gotta do 1,000 concerts free. 'Cause he's the man with the banjo, can't you hear it ring? With freedom in his heart, he makes the mountains sing. He taught the whole world to sing, we shall overcome. When there's peace and justice, that's when his work is done.
John loves that you can hear Tommy Makem singing in that song there in that second chorus.
Absolutely.
There it is.
Yep.
So everybody's connected, but that's a tribute to Pete Seeger, huh?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Joe, that's one of the few songs Joe wrote. I did most of the writing. Joe, I maybe only wrote 5 or 6 songs, but he wrote good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who's playing the banjo right there?
Of course, Joe.
That's Joe.
Yeah. Yeah, the man with the banjo.
Joe, it's the man with the banjo.
But it's a tribute to Pete Seeger, who we listened to from the time we were very young. Our oldest brother, Bill, was a big Pete Seeger fan. So we heard Pete Seeger long before the Beatles. And just not only Pete's music, but his activism was also very inspiring to us. And then to finally meet him. You know, Joe sent him a copy of that record CD, and it was less than a week later he got a handwritten note back from Pete saying, "I'm humbled by this song, thank you very much, and I don't know, but somehow, somewhere, we're going to meet." And about 10 years later, it happened. You know, we ended up meeting him in his hometown in Beacon and doing a show with him. We were just going to open up, and then he said, looks at us, he goes, "You know all my songs, come on." So we did the whole show with him. It was great.
You have these great stories of meeting your idols, and it always goes so beautifully.
It was just, it couldn't have been nicer. I walked down to the parking lot with him. He came, and we talked for an hour or so before the show. And he looked at me and said, "I better go get my banjo." And I knew it was a steep walk down a little alleyway, because that's where we had parked. And he was 92 at the time. So I walked with him. I put my arm out just for him to take. I didn't take his arm, but I put mine there for him about halfway down the alleyway. He grabbed my arm. We got to his car. It was a Lincoln Navigator, a hybrid Lincoln Navigator. Opens up the back and pulls out 2 banjos, no cases. And all his banjos had inscribed in the head, "This machine surrounds hate and makes it surrender." And he hands me a banjo. And he puts one on and he goes, "John, can I sing you a song?" And I'm like,
"Can you sing me a song?"
Stand in a parking lot with Pete Seeger, and he's going to sing a song just personally to me. And he did. He sang this beautiful tune. I didn't know it, but I found out later it was actually a poem written by a Japanese woman after World War II. Kind of touched on how, as terrible as the war was for the Japanese people, a new liberation started for the women. Women became a little bit more active, you know, and it blew me away. And then we did the whole show with him. I remember riding home with Joe. He was driving, and the Bills beat the Patriots that day in New England. And got it from on the radio. We're listening to him closing eye. I said, "We played with Pete. The Beatles beat New England and in New England. I think besides my marriage and the birth of my kids, this is the best day of my life."
and as you know, we're down to our last couple minutes, and I just want to say, Chris's book captures a lot of moments like that. And,
oh my gosh!
And the book also, you know, as the book concludes, you lose Joe not far from the time that Rochester and our region and our world lost Bat McGrath.
Oh yeah.
You know, and
Bat was a good friend.
I remember being at house concerts with Bat and just thinking, what a truly gentle soul and a loving person.
He was. We spent a week down at Bat's house working on songs with him before he was diagnosed, before he was ill a couple of years before.
Yeah.
Wonderful guy. I would take long walks. He had a beautiful German Shepherd, Wyatt. Wyatt and I there were woods behind his house. We'd go for these 2-hour walks. Just wonderful.
I mean, those are the memories that really stay. And I think books like this, Singing from the Heart, are going to be important historical documents when we are all gone. You know, I mean, I
The
think
first thing I
matters.
thought of was my grandkids. Whenever they want to read about Grandpa,
What a
there's
gift
my
this book
story.
is, right?
It's a gift to my grandchildren.
It's an incredible gift.
Absolutely.
You know, Conan O'Brien was joking a few years ago in his podcast that, you know, eventually all graves go unattended.
Yep.
And it's a way to kind of take your problems and bring them down when you think the whole world's too big for you.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's not true that all graves go unattended. Books like this remind us that music like this will live forever, I think.
Right. I remember when Tommy Macon passed away, Bono, U2 singer, said 100 years from now, nobody's going to know, still haven't found what I'm looking for, but they'll still be singing Tommy Macon
Isn't
songs.
that amazing?
You
Isn't
know?
that amazing?
Yeah.
Chris, congratulations on this book. Where do you want people to find it, Chris?
Okay. Anywhere it exists. It's available. We're hoping to get it into bookstores, but for now, it's certainly available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, of course, Barnes & Noble online, but even more importantly, Barnes & Noble in person, like to keep that in-person
There you go.
tradition alive. Sunday at Barnes & Noble, they can come and buy as many copies as they want.
Sunday, 2 o'clock, Barnes & Noble in Pittsford. Chris will be there. John will be there.
Yeah.
And I want to mention as we go here, Connie said, who is an Irish music groupie, I remember the story that I heard from Walt Borowitz, a.k.a. Brian Boru from the old Irish group Parnell and Boru, about how generous the Dady brothers were. One time when Parnell and Boru's equipment broke, the Dadys lent them everything they needed for the gig. They played mostly at McGinnity's, Parnell and Boru did. The band included Kevin Parnell, Wally Borowitz, and Tommy Hernandez, Tommy O'Hearn. They said the Dadys were so generous. Well, no surprise, and we're going to close the show with a little Morrison's Jig from Soul Lilt, if our guests don't mind. I want to thank Christopher Shannon, the author of Singing from the Heart. Congratulations again. Thank you, Chris, for being with us this hour. Wonderful conversation. And John Dady, you've given this community so many gifts.
You're kind.
You truly have.
Can I do one little quick plug?
You
Do we
got to do
have
it
time?
fast. You got to do it fast.
Okay, Little Theater Cafe on Wednesday the 5th, the Other Half Brewing Company on Saturday the 15th, and St. Patrick's Day show at 75 Stutson Street on the 16th.
All right. Stutson Street, that's my neighborhood up in Schlott. Thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you.
And from all of us, thanks for listening. We're back with you tomorrow.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.